Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Freedom Factor. Today, so before we get started, I want to disclose something. I was set to do an interview yesterday with a Colorado state representative, and unfortunately, we ran into some technical issues, and so that interview is going to now be taking place. We're going to record on Friday, and I hope to air it on Friday so that you all can see it. Anyway, let's get into today's video. This is, okay, so everybody's talking about this. This has recently happened. Pam Bondi testified before Congress, and man, she crashed out hard. This is what the Trump administration is coming to. Let's take a look at the first video here.
Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This is how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that? It's a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in. This guy has Trump
Gentlemen.
derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, she comes off just as, I don't even know. Like, how do you even give her credence on this? Like, her credibility is shot. And I mean, so the whole thing, to give a little background on that particular video clip, what was going on before was that list behind Thomas Massie was a list of victims' names that were released by the DOJ in the Epstein file dump. And that list was an email from the attorneys from the survivors, the victims, survivors, whichever word you want to use. They're interchangeable here. But that video, or sorry, that file, that list, was names to not release. Like it was from the attorneys saying, "Hey, these are the victims. Don't release them with the Epstein files." And of course, the DOJ saw those files, saw that list, because one of the names was redacted and the emails of the attorneys were redacted. So that was where Thomas Massie was lambasting the Attorney General on, you released this document, but then you redacted Les Wexner's name from the document that names him as a co-conspirator. It wasn't the fact that he was listed 4,700 other times. It was the fact that he was listed 4,700 other times, with the exception of the one document that names him as a co-conspirator. And that's what Thomas Massie was going after. And her saying, you have Trump derangement syndrome. You're a failed politician. No, Pam Bondi, you're the worst attorney general since Janet Reno. And Janet, I mean, you've got a long way to go before you're as bad as Janet Reno, because she's responsible for 20 children being burned to death at Waco. But Pam Bondi her performance has been abysmal. Let's look at this other clip. This one is especially hilarious.
I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history.
Yeah, one key point that Pam is missing here is that he released those documents after being forced to by a veto-proof vote on a bill called the Epstein Transparency Act. So the administration running around and claiming credit for this is just stupid. It's insane. Like saying, we released the documents. Yeah, after we made you release the documents. Public pressure, Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace all joined forces to make you release these files, and then saying this is the most transparent. Baloney. That is a bold-faced lie. First of all, no, it's not. They've been covering this up since the beginning. Trump even tried to say it. Epstein, you're still talking about him? This guy just never goes away. Yeah, because we're making it not go away, because this is the black mark on Trump's second term. Sure, Trump did good work in the first term with a lot of things on the economy and things like that. His second term, I think the only good thing he's been able to pull off is securing the border. ICE is not deporting nearly the number of people that were let in under the Biden administration. And now this Epstein thing will not go away, and we are not letting it go away because we want justice. We want answers. Nobody's prosecuting anybody. Now, had they come out from the very beginning and said, this is an open investigation and we're working on lining up prosecution in regards to the Epstein case, all of his co-conspirators, all the people that abused children, all the people that were involved in illegal activity, we're investigating. But no, instead, what they're doing is they're trying to make it go away. Now here, this one is the one that is, this one has got the internet on fire. So let's take a look at this. This is the best one yet.
None of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over, the Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
The Dow. She wants to talk about the stock market. That one, if you haven't seen that clip, that is probably the funniest part about this entire thing. This is what I think it's like she's really, really reaching. And you know what? All of this is just not shaking well. So, this has been kind of the talk for the last few days about this whole thing. And then over the weekend, we were treated to a wonderful, wonderful Valentine's Day surprise. So, let's do the first one here. This is kind of hilarious. This is Alex Jones. He tweeted this on Saturday night, and he put a little video. I'm not going to share the video. It's kind of stupid. Saying, kaboom, just in, AG Pam Bondi just unleashed the full Epstein files under the Transparency Act. All 3.5 million pages dropped. Redactions justified only for victims and high-profile names exposed with zero cover-ups for embarrassment or politics. Quote, no records withheld or redacted based on embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity to any official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. This backfired bigly on the left. Powerful Dems like Bill Clinton mentioned 1,193 times, and others busted, while fake smears against Trump called out his BS. Vindication for Trump! No, not even. And then, this is interesting. So notice the language here. And then Gunther Eagleman. Notice the language here. It's the exact, except for he put a little, this little, like, flashing light just in, red, red light special. We got this. Wait a minute. This is the exact same tweet that Alex Jones just sent. And yeah, what's that all about? So that is Gunther Eagleman. Not a retweet. This is not a retweet of Alex Jones's tweet. This is straight up the exact same words. This is word for word, just copy and pasted. So what did we get? Well, we got 3 pages of names from the Attorney General. It's kind of hard to read here on the screen, but basically I believe this is all the names that are mentioned in the Epstein, like, document, or the Epstein files. Names like, what do we have here that, like, kind of pops out at you in these names? Well, let's see. We've got Alexander Acosta, who, wait a minute, that's the guy that prosecuted Epstein back in the Obama years. Interesting. Steve Bannon, Julian Assange somehow is mentioned, Beyonce, Hunter Biden, Anthony Blinken. Oh, wait, look at that. Pam Bondi's name is in this list. Interesting. John Brennan, George W. Bush, Cher, Bill Clinton, George Clooney, Bill Cosby, Alan Dershowitz. Who else do we have? Rahm Emanuel, Michael Flynn, Bill Gates, Rudy Giuliani, Nikki Haley, Orrin Hatch, Eric Holder, Sarah Huckabee, Miriam Adelson. We know that name. Alec Baldwin, Ehud Barak, Jill Biden, Tony Blair. There's Joe Biden on here. William Barr. Wasn't he the Attorney General in Trump's first term? The guy that prosecuted Epstein the first time? Whose dad hired Epstein? That's weird. Tony Blair, I think I said. Jeb Bush. And we got Noam Chomsky, Chelsea Clinton, Kurt Cobain. Wait, Kurt Cobain's been dead for a while. Wait, there's more. There's so much more. Melinda Gates is mentioned here. Oh, look, Kamala Harris is mentioned. That's interesting. Jay-Z, Michael Jackson, Woody Allen. We've got I already read William Barr. Richard Branson, George Bush Jr. Wait, is that George Bush Jr. or is that George W. Bush? Tucker Carlson, Dick Cheney, Hillary Clinton, Michael Cohen, David Copperfield. That's weird. Princess of Wales Diana. Wait a minute. Princess Di. She died in like 96. That is an interesting one. Lindsey Graham, Reid Hoffman, Mike Huckabee, Mick Jagger. Interesting. And then we get to page 2 of this list. And we have even more names. Hakeem Jeffries, Janis Joplin, Alex Jones, John Kasich, John Kerry, Ro Khanna, Larry Kudlow. I mean, it just goes on and on. Monica Lewinsky, Nancy Mace. Oh, Thomas Massey's mentioned. And it's like, these are all names given without any context. But, oh, wait. Look, here's Benjamin Netanyahu, Gavin Newsom, Janet Napolitano, Larry Nassar. Oh, look, we've got Barack and Michelle Obama listed here. Rosie O'Donnell as well. Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, Kash Patel. Imagine that. Dan Quayle, who was the vice president like 30 years ago. That's weird. That is really weird. Rod Rosenstein, Amy Schumer. We got Jeff Sessions, Edward Snowden, Kevin Spacey, George Soros. Oh, Karl Rove. We got some of the... Oh, look, Ronald Reagan. That's interesting. And look, there's some other names that are really kind of weird here. Like Marilyn Monroe and Pope John Paul II, Elvis Presley, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. I mean, like, some of these names are just absurd. I'm Ben Shapiro's listed too, which is very interesting, and Bruce Springsteen. And I think, and then of course we have the last page is really hilarious. I want to show this. The last page has Ivanka Trump, Melania Trump, Donald Trump, Chris Tucker, Les Wexner, there he is again, and get this, Margaret Thatcher. Oh, and we got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mark Zuckerberg. It's just, you know, it's just hilarious that this is what they're kind of what Pam Bondi has released is this damning file that has her own frickin' name on it. It's a list of names with zero context, and I think what happened was they must have done some sort of thing that pulled all the names that are ever mentioned in any of the Epstein documents. You know, Janis Joplin and Mick Jagger and, you know, Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe were mentioned. It's like almost as if like this was a discussion or this was brought up in conversation or of some sort with regard to the Epstein documents. Their names popped up, so they pulled them and put them in this list that Pam Bondi released, that everybody's acting like this is some big gotcha. No, this is just a bunch of names with zero context whatsoever. It's not damning anybody. It's not exonerating anybody. It's not indicating anything. All it is names that happen to pop up. I'm willing to bet names like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey came up because they've been involved in trying to get the disclosure on the Epstein files. But so what does this mean for the greater context of things? First of all, this is a failure from the Trump administration, which 2025, and it looks like 2026 is going to be more of the same, have been just abysmal failures for the Donald Trump campaign, or for the Donald Trump administration, as if he's running again. No, and really, so this plays into two parts. One is, it would be one thing. They're mishandling this, and I think that they discussed it yesterday on Part of the Problem with Dave Smith and Robbie the Fire Bernstein, and I think it was a really, really good point that they said that they should have handled this differently from the get-go. They should have said, you know what, we are investigating this. We're looking into it. There looks to be a lot of really bad things and some foul things. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to release information as we can. But some of it we can't release because of ongoing, you know, investigation and potential prosecutions. That would have been the perfect way to handle this. That's how they should have done it. But instead, you know, you start with, and I agree with Dave Smith on this, the whole binder thing. When Pam Bondi gave the binders to those conservative influencers and said there's more to come, and it was this big public publicity stunt, this little dog and pony show that they did, and then she goes, the files are on my desk, and then she said there are hundreds of hours of CP. If you don't know what that is, for YouTube friendly, it involves younglings and explicit material. And it's like, okay, so where did that come from? Who provided that? I mean, we already have the Sultan from Dubai, or I guess it's UAE, who has resigned because of the Epstein release, because he is purportedly implicated in sending a torture video to Jeffrey Epstein, which, I don't know about you, but that's some pretty dark stuff. And then, again, I hate to refer back to another incident, but or another, you know, discussion on this. But Dave Smith also brought up a good point that the whole coded language involving pizza and grape soda, and then the beef jerky stuff. People need to be figuring out what the hell does that mean. And I don't think we're going to get answers to that from our Justice Department, especially under Pam Bondi. And so this whole thing looks really, really bad. They've just mishandled this from the beginning. And then Donald Trump in that press conference, like I mentioned earlier, where he goes, Epstein, you're still talking about that creep? Blah, 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 blah. Now, look, my belief on this, my working theory, based on everything we've seen thus far, I don't see a whole lot of evidence implicating Trump in a whole lot of bad acts. Although, as I mentioned before, he has kind of acted inappropriately with some of his pageant days. Because remember, Donald Trump used to run big pageants in New York City out of, he was kind of like the main guy in a lot of the, child beauty pageant stuff. And let's not forget that Trump cheated on his wife, multiple wives, or I believe, but he definitely cheated with Stormy Daniels. He was married when they had their affair. So Trump is not the moral person, but I have yet to see conclusive evidence. And of course, I'm going to still dig into this and pay attention, but I don't see a whole lot of Trump being implicated in a lot of stuff. I don't think Trump went to the island. There's been testimony from some of the survivors saying they never saw Trump with anyone. One of them was saying, I never saw Trump at the island. Things like that. So I have yet to see, I'm not ruling him out. I'm just saying I've yet to see any evidence thus far of Trump doing anything involving Epstein of any, really bad stuff. However, covering it up, I think is bad. And so my working theory on all of this, why Trump is acting so shifty with this, why he's trying to brush this under the rug or tell us to move on, is because Donald Trump is protecting people. He's already said that the Epstein files could hurt a lot of his friends. Well, who are his friends? You've got people like Benjamin Netanyahu, the entire Israeli government and intelligence apparatus, the United States intelligence apparatus. I do think that there are a lot of threads that are connecting Jeffrey Epstein to intelligence, including what Alex Acosta said during the first prosecution, is that he was told Jeffrey Epstein is connected to intelligence, or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact quote. But so there is a definite possibility that Jeffrey Epstein is connected to intelligence. There's some interesting email back and forth with Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, where they were joking about Epstein being part of Mossad. Ehud Barak has spent many, many nights at Jeffrey Epstein's place. As I talked about last week, you had the whole just everything going on with his neighbors. People knew about Jeffrey Epstein. And then I did some digging. Now, one of the things that they've mentioned, and this was mentioned pretty heavily when Sean Ryan interviewed Ro Khanna for the first time. He's done it twice. I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second. And to be perfectly honest, I give props to Ro Khanna on this, on the Epstein thing, but I had to turn the interview off when Rep Khanna started talking to Sean Ryan about how he wants universal health care and he wants to all these like left-wing Democrat progressive policies that he backs. And it's like, okay, you have me on Epstein, but you lost me on the rest of this kind of socialism light progressivism that you want to implement. I'm with you on Epstein. I'm not with you on anything else. Your policy is terrible, but I applaud you for the Epstein stuff. I applaud you for sticking to your guns and keeping at it. But Ro Khanna mentioned that there is it's just a lot of stuff that just doesn't sit well, and Trump is protecting these people. Plain and simple. That's the scary part, is that these people are covering for pedophiles, and that's the part that is really, really, really disturbing about the entire Jeffrey Epstein affair, is that they're protecting powerful people, and Donald Trump has said that his friends could be hurt. Well, if your friends are a bunch of pedophiles and money launderers and up to no good, that is not someone you want to be friends with. That's someone that we don't want our president to be friends with. We don't want our president associating with that. And when they say the release of this could topple the entire system of government. If that's the case, then maybe it should happen. Because I don't know about you, but I am really opposed to having a bunch of child abusers and ne'er-do-wells running our government, running foreign governments, running our allies. And there's so much. I mean, people want to try and say that there's this connection to Russia. Yeah, but not in the way you think. Everything that I've seen so far connecting to Russia puts Jeffrey Epstein in connection with the Russian oligarchs and getting a lot of Russian, high-power Russian people citizenship to Israel. And so it's, or at least permission to enter, visas to Israel, maybe not citizenship. But so a lot of this is just really, really damning. And I think the way that the administration is handling it has been just horrible. They've done a terrible job of handling this entire thing. And this is going to be the black mark that seals Trump's legacy as a negative. And history is going to remember the second administration of Donald Trump as being the Epstein scar is going to just cover everything. All the good that Trump could do over the next 3 years, I think, is going to be massively overshadowed by the entire Epstein scandal. And I've said this several times before. This Epstein affair, it's bigger than Watergate. It's bigger than Iran-Contra. It's bigger than Fast and Furious. And that's kind of getting into the other thing. Pam Bondi does this whole bit about Merrick Garland. Yeah, okay, that's deflecting. So we didn't, nothing happened when Jeffrey Epstein was given this sweetheart deal, I believe back in 2008, the first time that he was charged with soliciting a minor. And they said they had a bunch of other charges, but they only charged him with a few, and he was given this sweetheart deal where all the other charges were dropped. And then there's this whole thing of they're trying to pass it off at one point as, and this was Kash Patel and Dan Bongino doing this, that all the victims, which we know, oh, and I can get back into Ro Khanna's thing, but all the victims were trafficked just to Jeffrey and Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, that's an awful lot. There's over 1,200 survivors here, you know, and sorry, I lost my train of thought. The earlier Ro Khanna brought up the 302s. So for those who don't know, 302s are, excuse me, 302s are the FBI documents used for witness interviews. These are the documents where they lay out a bunch of the stuff from the interviews conducted by the FBI with the various witnesses and victims. They're kind of like when I worked in law enforcement, we had a standard witness statement that included, you know, all your personal identifying information, you know, name, date of birth, phone number, address, etc. And then you had your written, either I dictate and say this is what was dictated to me by the witness, or the witness writes it themselves. I imagine an FBI 302 operates under the same kind of conditions where a witness recounts all of their, all of what they remember, all of what they witnessed or were privy to or party to, and they put it on these forms, and then these forms are entered into the FBI file. And what Ro Khanna has said is we haven't gotten those 302s. We're still not getting the 302s, which I would understand if there's ongoing prosecutorial efforts by the Department of Justice and the FBI in prosecuting these people. And I've seen, I believe, 1 or 2 302 files. Now, the thing you've got to remember is, and I think I've discussed this before, but it's the pretty much ranking your witness or source reliability. And I dealt with this in the military and intelligence. We would have multiple sources, especially when I was operating in a combat zone. We would have sourcing. And a lot of the sources that we had were called human sources or human intelligence. Human intelligence is people, that you go out and you talk to people. And a lot of our sources had varying degrees of reliability. And that's kind of how these cases should be. You should judge the reliability of your witness based upon the truthfulness of previous information given. How accurate is it? Do they have a long-standing history of reliability in the past? Is what they say verifiable? Is it corroborated? Can you draw a nexus between what they're telling you and what other witnesses have said, other evidence has shown, things of that nature? So you have to connect these dots together to come up with a more comprehensive picture. And your witness testimony or your witness statements are how you judge that based on is there more than one witness recounting the same incident or recounting the same details or the same facts? Can it be corroborated? Is there other evidence that backs up what they're saying? And things of that nature. So not every 302 should be taken as 100% truthful, gold standard stamp of approval. This is what happened. However, you do have to judge each one based on the merits of the information given. And also you have to judge the proximity. Are they connected to Jeffrey Epstein in close proximity, or is this just somebody was at, one of the places that Epstein and some of his friends hung out, and it was like a waiter that saw them, or a bartender, or staff, or a hotel clerk, anything of that nature? Or is this an actual victim? Because I've seen some 302 files that one of them stated, and I'm not sure if I brought this up before, but it begs to be told again because it does kind of lend to the credibility of witnesses. One of the witnesses said that something happened with Donald Trump in 1996 at Donald Trump's California golf course. Well, when you look into it, the golf course that Donald Trump owns in California, he didn't purchase until the early 2000s, and it didn't fully open until 2006. So this is 10 years prior and they clearly say Donald Trump's golf course, which Donald Trump didn't own a golf course in California in 1996. He owned it later. A decade later was Donald Trump's golf course. So that kind of leads you to believe, okay, maybe this witness is less than credible. Maybe this witness is not very accurate or not very reliable, or the information they're providing is not true. However, that's how you have to judge every single one. And if there's 1,200 302 files, we have to go through each one individually and treat each individual as an independent piece of evidence that has to have corroborating evidence to connect it, either other witness testimony or other evidence gathered. And that's how we have to judge it. So I'm 100% behind releasing 302 files with appropriate redactions in terms of shielding victims' privacy. Everything else, I don't think needs to be redacted. None of these co-conspirators, none of the involved others. That's what in the law enforcement world, an involved other is someone who is involved in the case. They may not be a suspect. They may be a witness, or they may be just a passerby, or they may just be a subject of investigation. But either way, only the victims should be redacted. And they say national security. That one I'm kind of a little leery about. I don't think we should be pushing for I don't think we should release things that would actually legitimately harm national security. But I worry putting that provision in there in the interest of national security could lead to very subjective interpretation, especially from this administration, where they see anything that implicates any government official from our government or a foreign government or intelligence agency. They might view that as, well, this is national security related. We're not going to release that. That's going to be redacted, which I think is very bad because it's too subjective. I understand if it legitimately harms our national security. And one of the things that I dealt with military intelligence is a lot of the things that were classified, and anything, classified is a blanket term, because you have things that are not for public release, or no foreign, which is no foreign eyes can see it. It's only an internal, like within the intelligence community. And then you have secret, which you have to have a clearance to be able to access. And then top secret, which you have to have an even higher clearance to access. And then there's compartmentalization. So what classification does, to give you kind of a broad strokes, crash course lesson in, is classification is not only to protect nationally vital information, such as tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, as well as our capabilities, force strength, force movement. So one thing that is not secret or top secret, but is deemed classified, is things like when one unit is going from their home base to deploy to somewhere. That is usually protected information. What time they're moving, how many troops are moving, where they're going, what their mission is, things of that nature usually are kept pretty secret, because it does present, a threat, the vulnerability. And so that is one thing. But then another thing is sources and obtaining of sources. So, for instance, to give you kind of an idea, when I was in Afghanistan, we had a source who was in a village. We did not disclose any information as to what village this source came from, who this source was, because it was classified. We didn't want to let on that our information was coming from this particular individual. We had to protect them because the information they were giving us was good information. It was reliable information, and we wanted to protect them. So we would redact or obscure that source's identity. There's also the whole key of how that source was contacted, how you communicate with that source. Is it through, electronic communications like a cell phone or email, or is this face-to-face? You don't want to disclose how you contact that source, how you communicate with that source, and how you developed that source. Did we send out people to go meet this person? Did we, go around talking to people, and one guy said, hey, I'll talk to you, but let's, go over here and talk about it, because I don't want anybody to know I was the person that gave that information to you. So I understand that, protecting sources and protecting the avenues in which those sources are basically connected and that information is gathered from that source. However, with relation to a criminal prosecution, or at least investigation, you do want to protect your source, especially if they're needed to be brought in to testify during a trial or during hearings. You want to protect that. And I don't think the public has a right to know every single tidbit of information on this, in the event that we will get prosecutions. But I fully believe, I don't think we're going to. This administration has not indicated in any way that there's going to be a continued investigation into this activity. And that's where the big black mark on the whole Epstein case is really going to show through, is where do we go from here? We want transparency. Thanks to Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, we're getting transparency on the Epstein documents. Maybe not full transparency. I would like to see more, especially the names of these individuals that were communicating with Epstein that are redacted, that are not in the interest of national security, and they're not in the interest of protecting the victims. But they are just protecting bad actors. And that's the problem. That's what everybody is just hammering Pam Bondi and Donald Trump and the whole administration over. And so moving forward, the only way I think that this whole case we will ever see any form of justice, or anything will actually happen with this, is one of two ways. One, Pam Bondi has got to just drop the whole protect Trump thing, drop the whole following orders, and go rogue. I really do. I think she needs to go rogue and say, no, my Justice Department is going to pursue these sick, depraved individuals under the full force of the law behind us and go after them, which I really don't think is likely to happen. Or, and this is where Donald Trump could save himself. He's indicated the opposite. He's not going to. But he could, by firing Pam Bondi and getting another attorney general in, someone with some actual, backbone, and actually go after these people. That's the only way Trump can save himself from all of this, is to fire Pam Bondi and get someone else in. Or alternatively, Congress could force Trump's hand and they could impeach Pam Bondi. And I really do think they could charge her with obstruction, because she is obstructing. She's violating the Epstein Transparency Act by not releasing the files as per the documents, or as per the act says, with the proper redactions, not the improper redactions that we've seen so far. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, but no, there's millions of documents, and the act was passed on November 19th with a suspense date, meaning that this has to be done by this date of December 19th. And here we are coming up upon February 19th in just a couple of days, and still they have not released the documents per the act. And a lot of people say, well, that's just too many documents to release within 30 days. They have to go through, and even if all it is to redact the victims' names, that's still millions of documents that hundreds of these DOJ attorneys have to comb through to make sure that they're not releasing something like what Thomas Massie was pointing out with the list of all the victims' names. So I understand that stance, that they can't release them in the amount of time that was given. What they didn't do, though, is they didn't say to Congress, especially to Massie and Khanna, hey, look, we've got millions of documents here. It's going to take us some time to go through all these documents to make sure we're not releasing information that would be harmful to the victims. So we need more time. They never asked for an extension. They never asked for more time. They just stonewalled. And that is looking bad. There was a proper way to handle this, and there's the way they did handle this. And the way they did handle this looks terrible. And I think this could very well be the one thing that is going to harm Trump's legacy and Trump's administration the most. And especially this year being midterms, if they don't get the ship corrected on this, this could really harm the GOP in the midterms. And I mean, it's bad enough that, sure, a lot of what they could do, they could pivot. They could start going into, okay, fine, we're going to lean into this fully, and then make the Democrats look bad and say, look, this forced our hand, and we're going to go full transparency on this. But just remember that Joe Biden sat on this stuff for 4 years and nothing happened. And I do give credit where it's due. There was a prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. He was arrested during Trump's first term. I acknowledge that. However, he also died under mysterious circumstances under Trump's first term. So, was Epstein murdered? My theory is yes. My theory is that Epstein knew too much. Epstein had information that was damning to a lot of people, a lot of high-ranking, high-profile, high-power, high-dollar people. I mean, we're talking about, they're saying the implications from this stretch to, U.S. government officials, foreign government officials, as we've seen. There's celebrities, from film and music. We've got, big business people, giant corporate entities could be harmed from this, in which case I'm fine with all of this. If it means celebrities go to prison for, harming children, if business leaders go to prison, big bankers foreign dignitaries, all of that. Fine. Let the chips fall where they may. However, that does not justify this huge cover-up, and that's what I think is going to harm not only Trump in the long term and his legacy, but also in the near term when we're coming up on the midterms, which right now I'm glad I can wipe my hands of this and say, good thing I'm not a Republican because I don't have to back any of these people. However, I will say, being from Colorado, I am very pleased that Lauren Boebert has kind of gone away from the MAGA people in terms of the Epstein stuff, because that's the other problem. And one I want to touch on real quick before I close is there is this big issue within the MAGA movement where you have people. Now, Alex Jones did kind of backtrack a little bit after Saturday's whole, fiasco with the tweets that I showed you. But you have people, and I will name names because I'm not ashamed to. You have people like Cat Turd. He's probably one of the worst. Graham Allen, who I used to respect deeply before he got tied into this whole, conservative Inc. BS where basically Trump can do no wrong. You have all these people who are coming out and they're trying to say, like, Thomas Massie is the bad guy here. Thomas Massie is a traitor to the conservative cause. No, Thomas Massie is about the only principled politician left, and you people are trying to get rid of him? What does that say? So, no, Thomas Massie has been pretty good behind, most of Trump's agenda up until Epstein. Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's sad to see that she is no longer a member of Congress, because she was one of the principled ones, along with Thomas Massie. And everybody's saying that they turned on Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump turned on them by not fulfilling his promise to drain the swamp. Instead, he's protecting the swamp. And let's not even begin to mention that his, Build Back Better bill or whatever, the big beautiful bill, the big beautiful bill, extended more of Biden era spending and didn't incorporate any of the Doge cuts. We haven't forgotten about that. So Donald Trump is completely doing the opposite of what he promised to do back in 2015 and 2016, where he was going to go after these criminals, go after this corruption, drain the swamp, and change things. And instead of being the outsider that was setting out to do that, he's turning into the guy protecting them. And that is not what I voted for. I will say it. I voted for Donald Trump in 2024. I wanted to see him continue the work that he had started in 2016, that he was obstructed from doing a lot of. But then he gets, not only in 2024 did he get the presidency and popular vote, he got the House and the Senate, and he has a very friendly Supreme Court. So everything he wanted to do, he could have done. And he is yet to do that, except for maybe a few areas like energy and the border. So now with this whole Epstein thing, the only way he can really save himself and have any sort of vindication, as Alex Jones said, or redemption, is to start going after his friends that were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. So we'll see what happens, but my money is going to be on that Trump continues to stall, continues to stonewall, and continues to fight back against transparency and fight back against all these people calling for justice for these victims. And one final thing I want to say, that I've seen a lot of people on X and other places going after these victims, saying that they were 18 at the time or that they worked for Jeffrey Epstein. Look, if you don't know anything about trafficking, you know that once you're locked into this kind of almost servitude where people are trafficked, sometimes they will do things. Victims will do things that are not normal. That they try and do things to protect themselves. Like the whole recruiting thing. A lot of people are blaming victims for recruiting people into the organization to be trafficked and abused. But it's like, that's a survival mechanism. They're doing that so that they aren't harmed. And if it harms someone else, it's because they're stuck in this vicious cycle. So I think that's wrong. I think we need justice for these victims, not blaming them, not prosecuting them, and not basically dismissing them as like the whole stunt they pulled during the hearing where they had the victims stand up and basically answer that they had not been approached by the DOJ to be interviewed as to what they witnessed, what they were subjected to, what happened. People are dismissing them as players in this and not victims, and I think that's wrong as well. So I would like to see this kind of culminate into prosecutions and taking down some of these powerful and corrupt people, but will that happen? I don't think so. It remains to be seen, and I haven't seen any indication from this administration, especially from this particular DOJ, especially with the way that Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi have kind of conducted themselves. I don't think anything's going to happen, and I think that is going to be the one thing that's going to sink the SS Trump. And I'm really hopeful that we will see justice, but I'm very doubtful that we will see justice. So anyway, that's what I've got for today. Stay tuned. Friday, I've got that interview, and I will hopefully be able to air it on Friday. But until then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And I will catch you guys on the next one.